Today's video is one of brutality and savagery with a good deal of murkiness in relation to the motive, topped off with misinformation from multiple media outlets. Was it truly an online game that caused this outburst of violence, or something far deeper? Today we're going to be looking back at a case from 2007 involving 12-year-old Gabriel Kuhn and 16-year-old Daniel Petry. It's extremely graphic, and I will warn you guys to not look for additional information on this case too hard because you might run into some photos that you won't be able to forget. To give you guys some context, or an idea rather, last time I ran into these photos and this content was 2007, and I have not forgotten them. So you've been warned on that. Let's get into things. That's Daniel Petry, not to be confused with Daniel Petrick, shown here, who has an eerily similar name, went on to commit murder over a game, and also committed murder in 2007, the same year. Petrick murdered one of his parents over the game Halo after they confiscated it from him, and attempted to murder the other. They aren't the same guy, even though you will see them referenced in media outlets, and often the details get mixed up. Daniel Petry was 16 years old at the time and an avid online gamer. The committed crime is murder. The apparent motive, approximately $1.75 of in-game currency at the time in an online game known as Tibia. However, there may be more to this motive, which we will cover a bit later on. Let's take a brief look at Daniel's early life, although not a whole lot is known about him in general. Growing up in Santa Catarina, Brazil, Daniel Petry was said to be a troubled child prone to outbursts of anger while growing up, even over minor issues. This often led to scenarios playing out that didn't warrant the level of anger Daniel often displayed when he didn't get what he wanted. Due to these challenges, Daniel's parents attempted to intervene and get him help via psychiatric treatment sessions. However, these attempts were not successful, to say the least. Daniel was said to often abandon psychiatric treatment sessions, becoming aggressive and irritated in the process, and that was if he decided to show up to these sessions at all. As Daniel grew up, he would often skip the sessions as well as school in general in order to play video games with friends. One of Daniel's eventual gaming friends was 12-year-old Gabriel Kuhn, Daniel's neighbor. Gabriel Kuhn was described as your typical 12-year-old kid. He loved games and spent many hours playing them, as well as watching TV after school and during his free time. He was described as an overall happy child with a good attitude. I feel the need to point out that many media outlets with information on this case stated that Daniel Petry was scammed out of 20,000 Brazilian real, which translates to the $1.75. That's not true at all, as 20,000 real translates to around 3,500 USD modern day. Granted, that is modern day, but even taking into account the time frame of this crime, 2007, this doesn't add up. Rather, it was 20,000 of an in-game currency that, if sold for real money, would have generated about $1.75. Now with that out of the way, let's continue. Needless to say, Daniel did not get his 20,000 in-game gold back. Instead, over the next few days of being asked by Daniel about returning the money, Gabriel ended up removing Daniel from his friends list as well as blocking him on everything, keeping the 20,000 gold for himself in the process. Soon after, Daniel logged into Tibia and discovered that he had been blocked by Gabriel. The immense anger issues that Daniel had been dealing with for years came bubbling to the surface after discovering that he had been wronged. He decided he wanted revenge. At some point within the next few days, Daniel found a day that Gabriel would be home alone. Again, there are a lot of conflicting claims and things that were lost in translation regarding this. Some state that Daniel called the resident's home phone and reached Gabriel's mother. Unaware of their fallout, she divulged that Gabriel was going to be home alone soon and that he could come over and play video games with Gabriel, as he had done many times before. Others state that he simply walked over after watching Gabriel's parents and brother leave the home. However, the most reliable claim on the series of events was made by a few Brazilian news outlets from around where the crime took place at the time. During my research, I roughly translated some of the articles and pieced things together. And here's what I roughly pieced together. They state that Daniel and Gabriel had been playing together on Monday, July 23rd, 2007, around 8:30 a.m. I guess they had made up in the meantime at some point. The two were alone in Daniel's house, as Daniel's mother was at a friend's house and Gabriel's parents were working. Gabriel also had an older brother who was around 16 years old at the time, but he was at a dentist appointment. As for Daniel's parents, I don't think his father was in the picture very much, or around this time he potentially was at work, and his mother was at a friend's house getting pills and hanging out with her friend. At approximately 9:30 a.m., so around an hour later, Daniel called his mother and asked about what time she would be returning home. As the timeline goes, a few minutes after that phone call, Daniel pushed Gabriel and began a vicious assault, delivering a flurry of punches. Gabriel attempted to bravely fight back against Daniel, but with a 4-year difference in age and an immense size difference, Daniel was too strong and simply overpowered him. This attack temporarily rendered Gabriel unconscious. Daniel then took Gabriel to his bedroom and began assaulting him, the type of assault you can't openly discuss on YouTube. At some point during the assault, Gabriel regained consciousness and tried screaming for help, to no avail. When that didn't work, he threatened to tell his parents about what Daniel had done to him. Police state this generated an argument that spilled out into the kitchen. With every second the argument progressed, Daniel's uncontrollable rage and anger kept building. Daniel resumed the physical assault and even managed to grab a cord in the meantime to strangle Gabriel, rendering him unconscious for even longer than before. As a result, Daniel assumed Gabriel had died. Daniel is said to have tried to suspend Gabriel's body into an attic, which was just under 2 meters from the ground where Gabriel's body was located. That's just around 6 feet. But with the weight of Gabriel being too much for Daniel to suspend into the attic, he decided to disassemble his body. He went all throughout the house, returning with a large kitchen knife and a hacksaw. He then began the gruesome act of removing Gabriel's legs. After a few cuts, Gabriel rose up in shock and began screaming for help. It turned out he was still very much alive. This revelation only caused Daniel to simply saw faster and harder. Gabriel passed out again due to the shock and blood loss. It's said that throughout this horrible process, Gabriel was in and out of consciousness until the blood loss and shock eventually led to his death. Reports state that after Gabriel died, Daniel assaulted him again, after which he resumed removing the lower half of Gabriel's body from his torso. Even after removing Gabriel's legs, Daniel found that he could not hide the body and simply left the legs as well as the top half of Gabriel's body lying in the hallway of the home. The report continues that Gabriel's brother returned home from the dentist sometime later and didn't find his brother at home, so he checked Daniel's house. Inside, he found a terrifying scene. He found an immense amount of blood in the hallway as well as detached legs and the top half of Gabriel. Understandably, seeing this scene caused him to become completely overcome with shock and grief. He ran out of the house calling for help, with the neighbors answering his call. Police arrived, and upon speaking to Daniel, he outright admitted to the gruesome murder as well as all of the grisly details, with little to no resistance in doing so. The only aspect he battled back against was that he didn't assault Gabriel, despite clear evidence as well as the autopsy later showing that he did in fact do so. In the aftermath of this horrific crime, somebody snapped photos of Gabriel's body. This could have been someone who saw the scene early perhaps, maybe someone associated with law enforcement. They snapped pictures of Gabriel's mutilated body and they leaked them online. All this did was cause more pain and torment for Gabriel's friends and family, and an investigation was launched into finding out who was the culprit that leaked the images, but nothing ever came of it. Daniel Petry, being 16 years old at the time, and due to the way Brazil's sentencing laws against minors work, was only sentenced to 3 years in a juvenile facility for the murder of Gabriel Kuhn in 2007, and was released only 3 years later in 2010. Many members of the general public, as well as a very large portion of the Tibia player base at the time, came out against this short sentencing given the severity of his crimes. Upon being released in 2010, Daniel assumed a new identity and has not been heard from since by the public. He simply melded back into society, which is a very scary thought. This case is extremely disturbing, and again, don't go looking for anything on this case. You'll run into some stuff you don't want to see. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching this far. I really appreciate it. I'd appreciate a comment if you have any thoughts on the case. Maybe I got a few details wrong that you want to correct, or maybe you just want to comment and say hello. Either way, I appreciate it. And if you like the video, you know what to do. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.